Hey, Steve, people often talk about this idea of a breadwinner. What is bread, or what does it mean to be a breadwinner?
It's really interesting, that, Rick. So most people think that bread is kind of financial, it's monetized, it's
Yeah.
money.
Yeah, like my dad was the breadwinner, and
Yeah,
because he
exactly.
worked and mom stayed at home.
Yeah, and the people who are thinking that, they'd be right in thinking that, but it's also much more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. So more on that in a moment. But first,
Hello, I'm Steve.
and I'm Eric. And together we are two dads with one mission.
Welcome to the 𝗙𝗑𝗃 podcast. This is the show for dads, all about fatherhood, faith, and freedom, one conversation at a time.
So in this episode, we're going to explore this idea of bread. So, Steve, what do you mean by bread is more than financial?
Well, listen, growing up, we have our role models, and usually one of our biggest role models is those figures that are closest to us, usually our mums and dads.
Right.
So, growing up, I'm just going to talk about my dad for a moment. He would be considered the breadwinner. And from the era I grew up, so I'm a 70s baby. I was born in the early 70s, so kind of 70s, 80s were my decades. There was this stereotypical, dads being the breadwinners, which meant they were the people that kind of went out and went to work, brought in their wages, their weekly, monthly pay, paid for all the bills.
Right.
And the mums, or as you guys like to say over on your side of the pond, moms, mums and moms, they kind of stayed at home and took care of the family. So you had that stereotypical dynamic,
and that was the dynamic I grew up under.
Yeah, for sure. But when you talk about, the breadwinner, it was, when you think about breadwinner, the first thing that springs to mind for most people is the money bringer. But what I'm trying to say here is the breadwinner, the stereotypical dads, the bread, the money is just on the top. It's the surface. Yeah. But underneath that, it's the other roles. It's like, the dad or the male role model, that stereotypical is the protector of the family. Right. He's the safety net. He's got all the answers. Yeah. When things go wrong, he's the savior. He's the person that we can go to with all of our challenges. Dad will know how to fix this. Yeah. And that creates an incredible amount of pressure and responsibility. So, that's kind of one of the areas that I'd love to explore on this episode. And it's in terms of, yes, it is financial, but it's much more than that. It's all of those other things I've just mentioned, all of the other roles and responsibilities that come on a father's shoulders, a dad's shoulders, that other people kind of just expect, which stem back, let's just segue back here, that stems back from evolution. When we were in caves, it was the male and the male part of a tribe that would go out with the spears and go hunting by day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so, speaking of, maybe more ancient times, the Bible uses the word bread quite a bit, and it's not, when you look at it in the context, it's not simply bread that you would eat. It's more of the idea of like sustenance and like care and, that kind of thing, like you were describing. It's a much bigger idea. It's just used, kind of allegorically or symbolically for something much bigger than just, bringing home something to eat or the money to get food. It's much more than that. So, my dad, I grew up in a pretty wealthy home, and, so he brought home a lot of money, but he didn't really bring much else, emotionally. He was very like guarded and kind of disconnected, didn't really connect with me. I was the youngest of four, so I don't know what he was like with my older siblings, but with me, he was just gone a lot. And, the relationship with he and my mom by then was pretty bad. So I'm sure that just impacted who he was as a man. But yeah, he just he was a financial provider, but that was it, and that just left a lot of like gaps, in the home.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and it's really interesting that as well, Eric, because, you know, I think the relationship that you have with your dad also has an impact on how you evolve into your own stereotypical role of a father figure, and how you navigate fatherhood as an individual. You know, for example, if your dad or parents, not just a father figure, but we're specifically talking about dads here now, you know, if he or they had a bad relationship with money and finance, then it's highly likely as you were growing up that you will develop and adopt a similar relationship with finance. You know, and if you're one of the dads out there who is financially struggling right now, that can be as a direct result that possibly your parents and their parents before them struggled financially.
Right. And it just becomes your acceptable paradigm, you know, because you see the same thing oftentimes with kids, you know, from really wealthy homes, is they go on to be the same, you know, and maybe it's because they're given opportunities that others might not have, or maybe it's because they're just living by example, or a combination of both. You know, my parents, even though they were wealthy, they didn't have a good money mindset, and so that left me, you know, definitely with things to overcome in the way that I deal with money.
Yeah.
They never really talked about money, and then they talked about how, you know, they would say things like, oh, money doesn't grow on trees, and things like that. Even though, even as a kid, I could see, you know, I mean, we had all the trappings of wealth, but yet they still talked like there was scarcity.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that was a weird kind of paradigm.
Yeah, yeah. So I just like to just circle back to obviously that biblical reference you gave, and just expand on that, because the two kind of tied in nicely to what I said. Then you followed that up, and you know, just for the avoidance of doubt, if the listeners kind of missed the real moment there for me, and it's worth mentioning again, is in terms of, you know, bread is not, it's not something that you can get a hold of. It's not a thing that you can grasp and hold in your hand like money is. You know, when we talk about, you know, some people see bread as this financial thing. It's money. You can hold that. You can put it in your palm of hand. But it's much more than that. Bread is about this whole. So when I spoke about, you know, it's the roles that you adopt as a father, as being that safety net, safety, security, safe place. The you know, the person who knows how to fix things. When you think about those, and just, you know, safety, security,
Right.
you can't hold safety in the palm of your hand.
No, it's pretty
you can't
ethereal
hold
kind of
security
things.
in the palm of your hand. It's much more than that. It's like, it's almost like it's this ideology. It's this this concept that is much more beyond something that you can grasp.
Yeah.
And that's what we mean with that biblical reference, and what my understanding of the breadwinner is. It's all of these things that you can't necessarily get a hold of in your hand.
Yeah.
It's all of that. I hope that makes sense.
Like
intangible and I haven't just
qualities.
rambled there.
You know, something about bread is it is a consumable. So this analogy between bread and money, you know, money, if you hold on to money, or if you go bury it in the backyard, it doesn't really do anything for you. You know, so people, you know, wealth experts talk about the speed of money. You know, the faster money moves, the more that, you know, the better the economy is, and the better you are, and that kind of thing. So, you know, the analogy of bread and money is interesting, because they're both consumables, and you have to partake in it in a timely manner, you know, otherwise it'll spoil, right? I mean, what happens if you leave bread on the counter too long, and it just spoils? So there's something about that too. So, you know, money mindset is just something that is such a big deal in the world today, that it can create all kinds of limiting beliefs.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And, you know, whilst we're talking about that, and again, we kind of circle back around to financial, and I think it's because there's such a big emphasis on being the breadwinner is financial. You know, you don't have to earn the most amount of money to be a great dad.
That's right.
We say that again. you don't have to earn the most amount of money to be a great dad. You know, your greatness as a father, your greatness as a dad is not dependent or even connected in any way whatsoever to the amount of money you earn. I know some great dads who are the most amazing fathers on this planet, and they are broke. They're flat broke.
Yeah.
But they are great dads.
Yeah. And I guarantee you, your kids will not, like the memory of how much money you made will not stick out above and beyond how much they understood that you cared about them or took care of them or connected with them. So that's, you know, that puts money in its place, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's opportunities to create some magic moments. I love that phrase, magic moments with your kids. And, you know, the price of those magic moments costs nothing. There are things you can do, just spending quality time, chatting, walking, talking, that will bring the biggest smile to your children's face, because
or even using that money
want to be,
you know, using the money for experiences versus things, right? It's so easy to buy our children things, and I see a lot of dads like trying to figure out what to buy their kid for a birthday or something like that. And what that tells me is they need to put more focus on connecting with their kids, so they understand their kids more.
I was just going to use that word as well, connecting. You know, the primary desire that most children have, the number one thing is they just want connection.
That's right.
They want to connect with you in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So spending that quality time with you is priceless for them. That's a magical moment for them.
Hey, so we've covered, you know, some good ground here, and hopefully this has been helpful to the listeners, the hearers of this. But how do we put a bow tie on this thing?
Well, I think we could possibly just wrap this up with a couple of final points. You know, number one, again, I wanna make that emphasis about, you know, it's not all about the money. So your identity as a dad is not determined by the amount of money you earn and make.
Yeah, I would say that if you are identifying yourself with how much you make, you are setting yourself up for certain kinds of failure.
Yeah. So why don't you break that stereotypical mode and make your identity as a dad about the amount of connection you have with your children and your family, your partner, your spouse, your colleagues, your workmates. It's all about connection.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's what leads to a quality of life, not how much money you have.
So while we're talking about that, so, you know, let me ask you a question. Are you contributing, you know, on the whole? You know, are you really contributing out there? When people evaluate, you know, you as a dad, a father, a partner, a colleague, you know, are you really contributing? You know, I have this this phrase where, you know, everything out there, I always look for these little glimmers of brilliance out there, because I live in what I call an attitude of gratitude. I'm grateful for every moment that I have. I'm grateful for every moment to connect and to contribute, which is one of the primary reasons that Eric and I embarked upon the Allied Dads podcast as well. Is we wanted to connect and contribute on the whole with you know, people beyond just the two of us. We wanted to connect with as many other dads out there as we could.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a good segue into what's our next episode, because it relates directly to connection.
Yeah, so I don't know whether our regular listeners will remember 2 episodes ago, we started to talk about, you know, we had the most important challenges or the biggest challenges dads face. And we created a bit of a trilogy from it. We're kind of in the middle of that trilogy. So this is like the second episode of that trilogy. So the, you know, we're going to conclude the trilogy with the next episode, which is, where are your friends now? Yep.
And that's going to have a lot to do with, well, we're not going to spoil it. We're just going to leave it hang right there.
Hey, so Eric, where can people find...
if you want to, go ahead.
I was just going to say, where can people find out more about us if they want to connect?
I was just going to say, so just go to allieddads.com and you can find all of our information to connect with us and some other information about who we are. So go check it out. And what else, Steve? What do people need to do right now?
What do people need to do? So it just leads me to say those final few words of each podcast. Go and find us and subscribe to us on your favorite streaming channels. Allied Dads, you'll find us all over the internet.
Yep. All right.
See you on the next episode.
Take care. Bye-bye.